I'm not, am I crazy? Am I being a little too crazy here? I feel like they're like the media is like kind of celebratory of the situation. Like it almost feels like there is an air of excitement that like, oh, Trump is back, ratings are back, we're doing it. They blame the voters that are blaming the candidate. I know. I don't know. There is something that needs to be studied about the mind of the liberal, the mindset of the liberal that is a party loyalist that puts party above country at every step. And I find it very strange. I find it very odd. They keep losing over and over again, but they are so ideologically committed to the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party is ideologically committed to, I think those people, just like how quickly they swapped away from Joe Biden to Kamala Harris, would most likely also be on board with whatever the Democratic Party represents. Okay? If the Democratic Party tomorrow decided to, for example, be a socialist party or socialist adjacent, like actual social democratic party, plenty of those people would be riding or dying for it. They just need someone that they feel like they're on board with. They need an in-group. Okay? Kaya, place. Anyway, let's see what the liberals are saying about
Special
this.
edition of CBS Mornings, Donald Trump will be the 47th president of the United States. That's according to our CBS News projection. Donald Trump is the first president since Grover Cleveland to be elected to non-consecutive terms. He will also become the oldest president ever sworn into office, beating President Biden's mark of 78 years old in 2021 by just a few months.
Trump needed 270 electoral college votes to defeat Vice President Kamala Harris, and he's done it. In the end, the race was not as close as many predicted, with Trump not only beating Harris in key battleground states, but also winning the popular vote, something he's never done before.
And as we showed you at the top, the former president celebrated last night at his Mar-a-Lago estate, along with family, friends, and allies. CBS News projects he will also have help in Congress. The Senate has flipped to Republican control. The House is still a toss-up, and of course, he has a conservative majority on the Supreme Court as well.
Well, Tony DeCopel had a late night and an early morning covering all of this for us. He's across from Mar-a-Lago. He's in West Palm Beach this morning. Tony, good evening, good morning. What can you tell us? What is the latest there?
Gail, you and me both. What a late night and what a moment in American history. Really a wow moment in American history. One of the greatest comebacks in political history, as many people put it to me last night. Think about this. A twice impeached, 4 times indicted, once convicted candidate now appears, or is at this point, the president-elect of the United States for a second time. And inside that Trump watch party headquarters, I noticed the first bubbles of excitement, of exuberance around 9 p.m. There was dancing full on the floor by 11 p.m. And after the network started projecting Pennsylvania and then Wisconsin in Donald Trump's favor, pure joy from his supporters. I asked people to summarize how they were feeling in one word. I got one person telling me fantastic, another relieved, still another vindicated. And then, of course, they heard from the now president-elect himself.
We overcame obstacles that nobody thought possible, and it is now clear.
Dude, I feel like am I crazy? Am I being a little too crazy here? I feel like they're like the media is like kind of celebratory of the situation. Like it almost feels like there's an air of excitement that like, oh, Trump is back, ratings are back, we're doing it. Like we're gonna do the damn thing, we're gonna get the fucking ratings. But yeah, you have these people with the wrong positions. I don't know how you see this and think the answer is she didn't run left enough. Let me address that real quick. Actually, this is important for people to understand. When you look at this and you think, oh my God, the broader electorate has shifted right, you are not understanding that there are tens of millions of voters that voted in the prior election for the Democratic Party that is just simply sitting this one out. They felt like they were written off. Okay? They just didn't vote. The campaign didn't reach them. The campaign abandoned them. Sometimes openly said, we don't want you. We want Liz Cheney. We want the suburbs. Okay? You have to understand. That's why it looks this way. This is simply an abject failure of the Democratic Party. That's all this shows. Okay? I kind of regret this point. My point is not really that she shouldn't have gone left per se, is that this country is big and crazy and the answers are not as simple as being more left or more right. No, it is the answer. The answer is address the problems that people are experiencing. Okay? Address the fucking problems that people are experiencing. If you do that, then they'll come out and vote for you. Yeah, this can be very misleading. Yusuf Manayer, poli-sci PhD, says, the shift isn't about Trump growing his totals as much as the fact that some 15 million people who voted for Biden in 2020 didn't vote this time. About 155 million votes were cast in 2020, 137 million in 2024. Where did they go and why? That's it. And even in the Biden camp, even in the Biden race, the problem was that Biden should have had a larger victory. But he also did not go far enough in terms of activating people, in terms of motivating people. I remember I covered it. And he barely fucking eked out a victory with 42,000 votes overall. I explained it. I said, if the base doesn't hold out in Philadelphia, in the urban areas, young voters, black voters, brown voters from across the spectrum, if they do not hold out, then if the base falls, because she made no outward communication to these constituents. She just took them for granted. She was like, oh, we have it locked down. She will lose. And she did. And that's precisely what happened. So if I can see it and I'm a fucking idiot, then how the fuck can the Democrats not see it? Are they this blinded? I go back and forth on this. Because sometimes I think they are just like beholden to corporate interests and whatnot. And then other times I talk to actual campaign staff, right? I talk to people that work on, I talk to people that work in the DC bubble. And then I realize rather, is that no, they are just blinded. I think they're just simply blinded. Like it's not all just ideological purity and loyalty to like third way neoliberalism across the board. It's not just about being completely captured by corporate interests. I think that plays a role, but that plays a role in the bubble. Philadelphia turnout down 10% from 2020. Detroit is down, but only 3%, so that saves Slotkin. Keela Lacey says, Trump didn't win Pennsylvania, Harris lost it. The consensus from voters and organizers I talked to this week is clear. Democrats have abandoned working class voters, and it's costing them their political lives. It's class war. The focus on minority support for Trump ignores Dems leaving voters on the table. When black people are showing up for Dems, it isn't with unbridled support and unquestioning support. Maurice from Working Families Party said, Maurice Mo Mitchell, progressives and independents are the ones courting those voters, not Dems. I want more black voters asking questions in the political parties, recognizing that there is a larger and larger component of the black electorate that is persuadable. I talked about the warning signs about this. The more we move away, because that's just the passage of time, from the last time that the Democratic Party actually expended social and political capital to defend black people, the more younger black people are open to be convinced by the Republican Party. And it's even then, it's going to be by slim margins. But the fact that it even exists is specifically because the Democrats are not offering anything. And I don't mean offering something purely on racial boundaries, by the way. The civil rights movement is one thing. But even like offering things to young black men that you could offer to young men all across America and to young women as well. This requires you to have universality in mind when you legislate, okay? If you don't have universality in mind when you're pushing a legislative agenda, you are going to fall short of what is necessary. If you constantly try to fucking target specific voter bases on racial boundaries, one whole day of crying is crazy. I'm not crying at all. This is the expected outcome. This is the outcome that the Democrats wanted to happen, basically. I don't know why you keep saying I've been, I don't know why people come in here and say like, you're crying. But I guess I don't fault people for saying that because they are hallucinating a different reality. They're hallucinating a reality in which like the Republican Party is going to be helpful for them, for example. And that's pretty funny to me because this is not going to help you. Okay. As a matter of fact, like, unless I get fucking deported for, you know, saying mean things about Israel, he's probably going to be more helpful to me than you, okay?
That we've achieved the most incredible political thing. Look what happened. Is this crazy?
Donald John Trump addressed his supporters just before 2:30, this huge round of applause after a night that seemed to break his way early and often.
I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president.
I think that we just witnessed the greatest political comeback in the history of the United States of America.
Likely Vice President to be J.D. Vance promised that this political comeback.
Do you think Trump won the debate in the end after the result? No, Trump lost the debate, but it doesn't fucking matter. That didn't stop people from still being like, nah, I'm still riding with him.
For the ages would now become an economic comeback for America. Trump's crowd of watch night faithful included the CEO of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, Dana White, who called the apparent victory karmic vindication.
This is what happens when the machine comes after you.
Meanwhile, earlier in the night, Vice President Kamala Harris declined to address her own election night watch party at her alma mater, Howard University, leaving her campaign co-director to break the news to an already thinning crowd.
We will continue overnight to fight to make sure that every vote is counted, that every voice has spoken. So you won't hear from the Vice President tonight.
A night that began with cautious optimism curdled into something else entirely after Harris was projected to lose key battleground states like North Carolina and Georgia.
Donald J. Trump has an insurmountable lead.
Georgia, where Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger called the race for Trump before 11 p.m., even as the former president still faces felony charges there for his alleged attempts to overturn Georgia's 2020 results. That is one of several now uncertain cases against Trump, including federal charges tied to his alleged efforts to block certification of the last presidential election. As for what now, well, he said he would fire the special counsel leading that investigation. He's also promised the mass expulsion of undocumented immigrants.
Not so
On day one, I will launch the largest deportation program of criminals in American history.
Plus stepped up tariffs on foreign countries, and a public health-related cabinet role for former third-party candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a figure known for his anti-vaccine rhetoric. About his famous claim to act like a dictator for a day, his first day in office, that is, well, you can expect him to greenlight more drilling for oil. But for now, as most Americans say the country has been headed in the wrong direction, there was also an appeal to unity.
Because we're going to help our country heal. We're going to help our country heal. We have a country that needs help, and it needs help very badly.
And I'm happy to say that with me here in Florida is our tireless CBS News campaign reporter, Olivier Rinaldi. Olivier, you have one of the hardest jobs on the campaign. You've been following Donald Trump from the very beginning, been to more rallies than I'd say anybody, particularly on the CBS team. You're in a unique position to answer the question on a lot of people's minds right now, which is, how did he do this?
Well, they pulled this off with their signature ground game. This is something that started back in Iowa, and it's different than anything we had seen before. The Trump campaign had really deputized people that were their super fans. These were Trump loyalists. These were people that were volunteers that essentially were tasked with going door to door within their communities. And if they reached 10 voters and were able to get them to turn out for Trump, they were given a reward, whether that be a t-shirt, whether that be a hat. The next tier that they would then, if they got 24 voters, they would get expedited entry into a rally. If they got 45 voters, they would get a specific hat, a Trump team captain hat. I would see those when I would go to separate rallies all across the country, these signature white hats. So by doing that, they were really able to tap into local communities using people they know were Trump faithful voters. And by that, they were able to get to those low propensity voters, people that wouldn't typically turn out in a normal election, but able to really galvanize that vote, get them to turn out. And that's where you see that.
I don't think that was like the door knocking pyramid scheme wasn't the most successful method of turnout. I think the successful method of turnout stemmed from I mean, that was a part of it for sure, but he did this in fucking 2016 as well. Like, he did this in 2016 as well. He just went to like every... Remember something I told you when we were looking at Donald Trump trying to win like the Amish vote, which was really funny. Scott Presler like might be going to jail, but one thing that I told you back then was he wants to win. he will literally go to any, he will go anywhere if he thinks he can get 10 fucking votes. All right? He'll go anywhere if he thinks he can get 20 fucking votes. That was why, as the New York Times is reporting, he even did this. Both campaigns are digging through the troves of data to find these crucial Americans. They both think many are younger, black, or Latino. The Harris team is also eyeing white college-educated women. The last-ditch hunt. This article showed that Donald Trump went to a Palestinian restaurant specifically because they found out that like any sort of mention of Israel-Palestine that didn't immediately automatically favor Israel was able to captivate a shit ton of undecideds. Not just Arabs, by the way, just undecideds in general. Tom Suozzi, who scraped by Tuesday, Democrats have to stop pandering to the far left. I don't want to discriminate against anybody, but I don't think biological boys should be playing in girls' sports. He added, Democrats aren't saying that, and they should be. Yeah, no, that's the resounding message here. Dude, there are no more minorities left to shit on, brother. At that point, there is like no one left. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's your takeaway from this, is the fucking trans people thing. Like, they are, I'm sorry, dude. They are no different than the unhinged Republicans who look at the unhinged Republicans. By the way, I told this to my trans community already, that they were going to do this inevitably. Okay. When you don't want to take a look at the larger problem within the party, when you don't want to question your ideological commitment to just refusing to even recognize material solutions to people's problems, okay, in the form of progressive economic policy, populist economic policy, if you are choosing to officially not look at that at all, then you don't have any avenues left. They're just going down the fucking carousel. They're literally going off one marginalized group after the other. They're like, okay, let's cast aside immigrants. Okay, fuck them. YOLO. We did that this election. Wasn't enough. Must be the trans people. Fuck them too. It's so stupid. When you have incredibly popular governors in red states that are unequivocally pro-trans rights, that just say, no, this shit sucks. Don't even bring it up. I don't care. They're your neighbors. They're our children too. They're God's children. Fuck you. You know, stay out of their own damn business. Mind your business. Who's this Nicholas Fandos? What do you mean? He's a New York Times political correspondent for New York Times Metro. He's interviewing Tom Suozzi. I believe he's the Long Island guy. One thing that I also have to say here, one thing that I have to remind people here is that, like, there is genuinely a commitment from the Democratic Party that, like, they are duped by Republican messaging. Like, they believe it too. Just like we talked about the demographics of destiny narratives, right? Which are inherently racist, no matter who is pushing it, right? They also believed in the lies that the Republicans were fucking committed to. Like, for example, when they chose Tim Walz and the Republicans were like, aha, you fucked up big time. Nobody wants a loony like Tim Walz, the radical socialist. Only person with a positive approval rating in the race, by the way. JD Vance underwater, Donald Trump underwater, Kamala Harris underwater, Tim Walz the only person with a positive approval rating in the race. They believe their own lies. The Republicans do believe their own lies. They do legitimately think that, like, yeah, you're right, a popular progressive guy is going to be viewed as a radical loony by the broader electorate. That's what they think. Meanwhile, that's not how the electorate views it at all. But it doesn't matter because the Democrats hear that and they also believe it. So then they tell Tim Walz to shut the fuck up. The consultant class needs to be completely ripped apart and rebuilt. They are far too invested in certain narratives that they believe. It is wild that they believe children's sport is a top concern for voters. I know. They see one messaging poll and they go, oh, that's it. We got to kill trans people. Fucking insane. But they did that shit with undocumented immigrants too. They don't look at the second thing that's polled in any of those messaging polls. Okay? That's what's so frustrating about it. They see the top line, they see the headline. The headline says 60% of Americans want mass deportation. They go, "Oh my God, we got to do mass deportation." They never look at the second fucking line right underneath it that says 64% of Americans want conditional amnesty for all migrants. They never look at that. They look at 60% of Americans think that trans women should not participate in sports that they're, you know, in sports alongside cis women, right? They never look at the second line in that goddamn same exact fucking poll that says 64% of Americans believe trans people are disproportionately targeted. There's a lot of bigotry towards trans people. They never do that. So when they don't look at the second line on those polls, okay, when they don't look at the second line on those polls and they only respond to the first line, they end up normalizing this position amongst their own base. They start scaring their base into believing that, yeah, we got to go more right wing. We got to go more right wing. It's so stupid. You're playing on enemy territory for no fucking reason. Launch a counterattack instead of going into your enemy's waters and trying to beat them at their own game. You'll never win there, okay? You're a joke, man. GG making money from morons.
Rural vote really skyrocketing in this election.
Olivia, I knew the election was going in a direction that was positive for Donald Trump when you told me that you were hearing from inside the campaign and they were looking at the exit polls, quote, gleefully. It certainly ended up that way for him last night. And thank you so much for your work this campaign season. You can now rest, I can say.
Thank you. Let's dive into the latest number.
I've never given Hasan a cent, and I watch him 8 hours a day for like 3 years straight, Law. Well, now is your time to subscribe to change that if you would like to do so. Twitch Prime is free. Or you can subscribe for $6. Or you can get gifted a sub if you're lucky. It can happen. It can happen for you. You can use the emotes, you know.
And what they reveal about the race and what's next for the next 4 years. NBC national political correspondent Steve Kornacki's right here at the big board. A very long night. I remember in the beginning we said we might not know results for the night or maybe even through Saturday, but here we are with a decisive win for Donald Trump. Break down what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all remember 2020 and the timing. It certainly went faster. Well, you could see here in Georgia, in North Carolina, in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, those are the battleground states that have already been called. Trump is sweeping them so far with a few more still to be decided. Obviously, he's the president-elect no matter what. Going in Pennsylvania, and I can show you, though, where Trump has won the state by about 2 points. I think the way to sum up what he did in Pennsylvania and across all those battleground states is blue-collar voters and a more diverse coalition of blue-collar voters than we've seen in the past. Because you see here around like where Scranton is, you see it's blue, but Donald Trump made big steps forward here in that county. He barely lost it this time. He lost it by almost 10 last time. And then there's a number of small cities and mid-sized cities here in Pennsylvania, places like Reading, places like Allentown, with very large Hispanic populations, working-class Hispanic populations. And in all of those places, Trump has made some very significant gains here.
What happened with all the independents? Because there was that whole thing, everyone's going to fight for a tiny sliver, the Haley Republicans. What's going to happen with those kind of independents? What happened?
Yeah, I can show you again. We'll stick in Pennsylvania, but this could apply elsewhere. Democrats were really looking at the suburbs in particular, right outside Philadelphia. They thought there'd be a women's vote, an extra women's vote, extra independent vote. And I'll show you, here's an example like Montgomery County. This is a huge suburban county. And hey, Harris won it. But let's just compare it to what happened here in 2020. Joe Biden won this by even more. And in Democratic expectations coming into tonight in a place like Montgomery County was to win by an even bigger margin than Joe Biden had. They didn't even hit that number. Trump improved here.
Let's talk about the blue states, because there are some crazy results that came out of these. You look at New York and you look at Illinois. Those were clear wins for Harris, but there are some Trump numbers in there that are surprising.
Yeah, I did some double takes when I looked at some of these states. Let's go up to New York, and it remains a blue state here. Kamala Harris wins it. But just check out what New York looked like 4 years ago and typically looks like. Joe Biden won this by 23 points. Trump basically cuts that in half. He did something like that in New Jersey as well, in Illinois. And just to show you what that means nationally, he doesn't pick up any electoral votes because he didn't win those states. The popular vote looks like right now. Trump is winning this by more than 5 million votes.
Trump has literally been saying all year that hundreds of thousands of immigrants are murdering Americans every year. And I don't think I've ever heard a single Democrat say, actually, no, they're not. Yeah. The only thing I've heard from the Democrats is not saying that, but basically agreeing with it on principle and advancing like more advancing right-wing border bills and saying that they're going to be prosecuting the transnational gangs themselves.
Still a lot to be tallied, but Trump is in very good position now to actually win the popular vote.
Will you show us Illinois, too? Because
Yeah.
something there happened as well.
Look at this. Still some votes to come,
Yeah.
but my goodness, a 4-point lead here for Harris with over 90% in. She's going to win the state, but wow. 17 points was Joe Biden's margin here 4 years ago.
What about Hillary? I was just thinking about the gender gap everyone's been talking about. Okay,
You'll go back to 2016, same thing here. 17 points for Clinton, 17 for Biden. And just look at that shift towards Donald Trump. Again, he doesn't pick up any more electoral votes. But in terms of the national popular vote, this does something very different than this.
And what's still outstanding? What are we still waiting for?
Yeah, so we're still waiting for some of those battleground states. I think the one that may be the most imminent is Michigan. We'll check in there. You see Trump is leading by more than 100,000 votes. If Harris is going to reverse that, it's going to come out of where Detroit is here, Wayne County. But I can tell you that's a heck of a hill for her to climb there in Michigan. And then we've got Nevada, Arizona. They're just very slow counting states, but to show you what they look like, Trump, they're about two-thirds in Arizona. Look at Nevada. Let's go up to Nevada, get that working. We got more than 90% in. Trump's ahead by 5 points there. No Republican has won out there in 20 years. So again, the possibility of Trump sweeping all 7 of these battleground states is very real.
A decisive win. All right, Steve, thank you so much. Craig.
Hey, thanks for watching. Don't miss the Today Show every weekday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific on our streaming channel, Today All Day. To watch.
People on Twitter are saying they're recounting votes. Is that true? I mean, they'll probably
So
try
this
to
morning-
institute a recount, but like the vote count hasn't ended yet, and it doesn't even fucking matter because Donald Trump is clearing the table. Don't listen to fucking Blue and on people. I haven't seen anything like that. It's over, okay? Please. Kamala Harris already fucking conceded today.
Donald Trump is not just president-elect again. He just became $1 billion richer, at least on paper, as social media stock DJT surging ahead of the opening bell. And just moments ago, you can see that's not all that's up. The Dow now up nearly 1,300 points. All right, let's go over and talk to our friend Harry Etten, not looking at his 401k here, but looking at where and how the economy played in this election.
Yeah, I wish I was $1 billion richer. Look, James Carville said it best. It's the economy, stupid. And take a look at how folks felt about the condition of the nation's economy. 67% of voters said not good or poor. Awfully difficult to win when that 67%. And how did those 67% of voters vote in this election? We see, look at this march. Yeah, you can't win. I mean, look at that. Donald Trump, what is that? That's a 40-point margin among those who said that the economy was not good or poor, and that was the vast majority of voters. Now, I want to dig in a little bit deeper. I want to look at Latino voters and what they said was the most important issue for them. Look at this. 40% of Latino voters said the economy was their number one issue. And how did they vote? Those who said the economy was the top issue? We can see that they overwhelmingly by a 2-to-1 margin chose Donald Trump. We know from the exit polls that Latino voters, there was less support for Kamala Harris than any Democratic nominee on record since we started conducting exit polls in the early 70s.
When people say the economy is their number one priority, they're not just talking about the consumer price index, for the record, or they're not just talking about things that you, not even the CPI, but like the things that you would normally consider as like top of the line shit. They're talking about housing costs as well. They're talking about healthcare costs as well. They're talking about the affordability of everything. And a lot of people simply look at like, I don't know, gas prices and say, oh, well, gas prices are up or gas prices are down. Like, I don't understand. It's like, no, it is a much larger problem than that. That CPI, all of that is baked in the core CPI. I know, but it's not necessarily just inflation, right? It's not just inflation, because a lot of these people are like, why are prices not going down? Not understanding that that would not be inflation. Inflation, the rate of inflation adjusting or rebounding means that prices are still going up. It's just not supposed to be. It's now going to be outpaced by wages growing. And therefore, things are more seemingly affordable. But most people don't recognize that. And if you're if your anger or your resentment is simply to be like, oh, you fool, you do not understand. Like, inflation is actually under control. What the fuck? You fail to consider that even though the situation is seemingly getting better in comparison to where it began in 2020, these people were upset about the economy in 2016. It is the same exact resentment that has been left unanswered by the Democrats. This is the major point that I tried to make over and over again. I was like, listen, the reason why people were frustrated with the Democratic Party and took a shot with Donald Trump in 2016 is because they were still hurting. They were still fucking hurting. And if you don't address that and you think, well, you're stupid, you don't understand, the economy is rebounding, right? Then you're still not addressing it. You're still not addressing it at all.
70s, and I think the economy had a lot to do with it.
Just those two numbers at the beginning, how people rated the economy and how people who rated the economy voted. If you only knew that, you probably could have predicted the outcome of the election.
It turns out it is the economy, stupid.
All right, Harry, thank you very much. Let's go over to Phil Mattingly now at the Magic Wall to find out how and where these sentiments on the economy play the most.
What's so fascinating about this, we've all heard Democrats very frustrated because when you look at the top line macroeconomic numbers, there's every reason for somebody to feel good about the economy. Why aren't people feeling it? You would hear over and over again. For months, I've been staring at Pennsylvania because despite those good top line numbers, I'm going to pull up every county here where you see darker counties. That is where cost of living is, the wages and wage growth has not kept up with cost of living. The darker the county, the more difficult it has been for the people that live in that county. Now, I see you smiling. You see what I'm doing here because when you overlap the results from last night, counties that Donald Trump did very well in, counties that Donald Trump flipped, you will be very surprised to learn that right here and right here and right here in particular, but also right here.
Wow. What? I don't understand. Wow. Shocking.
And now, I'm going to show you. This was a county that, in 2020, was Joe Biden County. In 2024, Donald Trump flipped the county and flipped it by a sizable margin. What about Erie? This was a county that was Joe Biden County. Back in 2020, won it narrowly. In 2024, he flipped it back into Trump's category. This was a county that was, in 2020, a Joe Biden county.
But what about the vibes? Not only the Brat vibes, not only the Brat Summer vibes, but Kamala is Brat vibes, but also, more significantly, that like the vibe session. What happened to those fucking vibes? They just ain't voting for a black woman, nothing to do with the economy. Please, no, keep repeating that over and over again. You're right. We should not. The only answer... I like that this is the wokest way to just be like, we can never run a black person or a black woman for president, you know? But you're saying it in a woke way, so it's okay, right? It's so fucking funny. Like, what's the argument? America is just too dang racist, brother. You don't understand. This is not something we can fix. We need to literally just only run white men. It's dumb. It's also incorrect. This does not mean that race and gender is not a factor in the considerations of a lot of people. That certainly is the correct assessment. It's just you're outweighing it. You are placing too much emphasis on that. Okay? Everybody, including but not limited to Kamala Harris, knew that Kamala Harris was a black woman. I guess with the exception of Donald Trump, who kept saying like, is she even a black woman? I don't know. She just decided to be black one day. But everybody fucking knew that. Okay? She knew that too. The point is, you work within the confines, okay? You work within your limitations. You work within those hurdles. I'm not going to sit here and be like, there's no way a black woman could ever become president. It's stupid as fuck. Anybody could become president. It's just, do you have good policies or not? Are you a good, skilled orator of said policies or not? And if people are fucking upset about the economy and they want to punish the responsible party, and you are running and hugging and kissing the person that they are correctly pointing to in terms of the economy not being fixed, then yeah, you're going to get punished. And even then, there is obviously a lot of stuff that she could have done to continue picking up support from these places or from other places. Like places where she has a base of support, where the Democratic Party has done well. They didn't do that. And the bottom fell out. And the reason why the bottom fell out is most importantly because not necessarily just the economy, but the reason why the bottom fell out is because she hyper-focused on the suburban white women vote, and that was a spectacular failure. Center County is the perfect example of the bottom falling out. That's where Penn State University is. Trump went there and campaigned, and it flipped the switch. Yeah. She took so many progressive voters for granted. She took those constituencies for granted, thinking they're going to come no matter what. They looked at the first polls that came out where there was strong support from the double haters, from the people that originally from the black, brown, and young voter blocks that said that they were enthusiastic about Kamala Harris as opposed to Joe Biden. And then they just never looked at it again. They were like, nope, that's it. We got it. It's in the fucking bag.
County by a pretty substantial margin, more than 6 points. In 2024, it was flipped into Donald Trump's column. This is interesting based on what Harry was just talking about. This is Berks County. You move over here into Lehigh County. These are two counties where the highest level of Hispanic vote within the 25% in both of these counties. While Democrats were able to hang on to Lehigh County, this margin right here in Berks County, 55% to 43.3%. It was part of that kind of string of counties in the blue-collar center of the state, outside of the collar counties, where Donald Trump improved his margin in every single one of these counties. And again, I just want to show this real quick one more time, because it's wild to look at when you get a sense of if people in Pennsylvania are frustrated about the economy. It turns out when you track where their wages were versus where the cost of living was, and you look at where the darker counties are, much of which not only Donald Trump improved on, but flipped those counties entirely, you understand not everyone was feeling it. Not everyone was feeling it in various parts around the country, but particularly in what both campaigns acknowledged was the most important state in this election, and a state where Donald Trump has, by all accounts, done better than he has in either of the prior two elections, and flipped several counties that either Joe Biden wrested back control of back in 2020, or flipped, like Monroe County, the county entirely. John?
Such a good demonstration of how the economy mattered in the places that mattered most in this election. Let's now look at the right camera and also bring in our panel of experts here, starting with Matt Egan, because I got to say, investors like something this morning.
Yeah, absolutely, John. Wall Street is starting this next Trump era with a bang. We see the Dow up more than 1,200 points. It's about 3% on track for the best day on a percentage basis in 2 years. I think part of what we are seeing is a relief rally. Investors around the world are relieved that someone has emerged here as the clear-cut winner. There were fears among CEOs and investors that this could.
Am I doing the Republican tinfoil hat wearing shit when I think Elon Musk rigged it? Yeah. Yes. This is an interesting take. As in 2016, it's likely another leftist wave is on the horizon now, while the previous one stagnated into pro-status quo social democracy. Being post-2020 and post-Gaza puts a new leftist wave on much better footing. Despite everything else, this is something to look towards. In its dying breath, all the 2016 wave could produce was an endorsement of Joe Biden, rejecting the uprisings from the very same year. But I think this is largely because the left simply didn't have much to offer budding radicals. It was itself already stagnated beforehand. Now the horizons of what's possible have been broadened, and people are less concerned with just picking from a list of 20th century ideologies to have historical debates. Broad change likely isn't happening soon, but local change and mutual protection is both possible and vital. First of all, before people say accelerationism is real, you need to understand something. This isn't accelerationism. The Democrats have already accelerated. The Democrats literally did this. They lost to Donald Trump. So now we have to deal with it. And in the sea of all of this chaos, the progressive movement in this country has an opportunity to once again revitalize and try to organize against the Democratic Party. And by that, I don't mean like set up a third party or some shit. I mean specifically organize against the establishment within the Democratic Party and try to capture more seats and more power within the Democratic Party by force. That's what I mean. But even then, it probably won't be enough. And the Democrats will fight back tooth and nail, I think.
Drag on for weeks or longer, that there could be social unrest. And that obviously would have created enormous uncertainty. But there's also an element of this that is relief that it is Trump that is the winner, because there are elements of the Trump agenda that are pro-business. Think about tax cuts, cutting red tape. That's why we've seen big bank stocks surging, because they're betting that Trump will cut regulation. That's why we're seeing crypto go straight up, and crypto and Bitcoin go straight up because of the red tape element. But market veteran Art Hogan.
Do you really think accelerationism can work? I'm not saying this is accelerationist. The Democrats accelerated by losing to Trump again. Like, look at this fucking dildo, dude. Your body, my choice forever. These fucking Nazis are celebrating this shit. Like, what do you have to say to that other than it's already accelerated? It's nothing that the left could do. It's not like the left pushed for this. I don't know how else to describe this process to you. Shit is already accelerated, and it's not the fault of the left at all.
He told me this morning that he thinks that some of this enthusiasm could actually be short-lived, because there are also elements of the Trump agenda that are not pro-business, such as getting into fights with CEOs, massive tariffs, massive deportations, and a skyrocketing deficit. For now, though, investors are not paying any attention to those negatives, or they're betting that those campaign promises are not going to become a reality. Right now, the focus is on the positives.
So I'm not saying that investors and that Art Hogan aren't real people, because they are. By definition, they're all people. But, Professor, I am curious. If you're waking up today, one of these swing states or anywhere in this country, wondering, gosh, what's going to change for me economically now that Donald Trump is going back to the White House? What should you be thinking?
So the first thing I would be thinking about is the agenda on tariffs. That is the number one issue that I think most Americans, that has the most opportunity to affect the most widespread of an American audience. And I say tariffs because, these questions about deregulation, about cutting taxes, cutting corporate taxes, and cutting taxes for the wealthy affect a very small percentage of the population just off run. The tariffs, right, we actually have numbers about how that would affect everyday Americans. I think the Economist, the Wall Street Journal estimated about $4,000 additional dollars per year that you would be paying due to these tariffs. So if I'm an American, and I'm an average everyday American, I want to know what these tariffs are going to look like, when they're going to go into effect, how they are going to affect my bottom line, and really be worrying about that. So the real question is, will Trump actually be able to push that through? Or is that something that, say, the Republican Party decides they want to hold him on and not allow him to do?
Mark, it's interesting. Prices aren't going to go down. I mean, inflation may be stable at 2%, which is a good number for inflation, but prices aren't going to drop. And frankly, people shouldn't want prices to go down on things, because then you get into a deflationary cycle, and Matt can go on for hours about how that's not great for an economy either. But will there come a point in the next 6 months where some of these economic trends that have been positive over the last few months begin to sink in? And then who gets credit? Will it be Donald Trump because he's the guy there?
Well, he'll certainly take credit for it, as he's took credit for all the economic successes during the Biden administration. But, I mean, look, this is what I think we have to really think about. We discuss the word mandate. We talk a lot about it. We're going to hear a lot about it when it comes to economic policies over the next 6 to 8 months. But this is the reality. 75% of Americans thought, or at least told us, that they faced either some kind of moderate or severe hardship because of inflation. 3/4 of Americans. How does Kamala Harris go up against those winds? Those are headwinds that are impossible to break through. But this is what is really interesting in it all. Going into the election last night, Kamala Harris had a better favorability rating than Donald Trump. So keep that in mind. Donald Trump's favorability rating was 44%. Kamala Harris's was 48%, and he still won and won so decisively. Again, why? Because people are feeling it in their pocketbook.
Yep. And the question they want to know is, when's that going to change for me, and will Donald Trump change it quickly?
Former President Donald Trump is projected to be the 47th president of the United States of America.
Deserve and that you deserve.
We already seen all this shit.
This will truly be the goal.
Pork has the key issues on the ballot in different states. But first, Lucas Tomlinson is live at the White House with Trump's path to victory. Lucas.
Well, good morning, Brian. As Steve and J.D. Vance said adroitly, this has to be considered the greatest political comeback in history. We knew who would win. The battleground states would win this election. And, of course, it all started with Pennsylvania. Whoever won Pennsylvania, no doubt, was going to win the race. The race was called in Pennsylvania at
I'm going to have Bradley Martin on in an hour or two to talk to him about his support for Donald Trump.
19 a.m. No question, Trump's campaigning in the western part of the state recently helped move this race over the finish line. The state is the second largest producer of natural gas, and where fracking produces a majority of this country's energy, working class Americans helped move Trump over the finish line. Now let's move down to Georgia. The state was called for Trump at 12:48 a.m., a state Trump narrowly lost in 2020 and vital to his re-election win. It was in Wisconsin, let's go over there next, that put Trump over the edge, over the finish line, winning by 3 points and sealing the victory. Trump taking the blue walls of Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. And, of course, down in North Carolina, that was the first of the swing states that Trump won, setting a tone for the evening. The state was called for Trump at 11:43 p.m. Now, Arizona, moving out west, has not been called yet. We had been warned it would take days to count all the votes. And in Nevada, another state that has not been called for Trump yet.
Bangs and now Bradley Martin. Nah, bro. Hell yeah, brother. What are you talking about? Okay, I'm going to skip this. Kellyanne Conway personally thinks the View for Trump's victory. Speaking of the View, where is it? Don't we have the fucking clip from the View of Whoopi Goldberg crying? Oh, here was a brief moment. Here was a brief blip where a CNN analyst actually had a good take, which of course, you know, that's rare, but
this is the leftovers of the 2016 kind of mess, that there were all of these issues that the Democratic Party saw laid out very clearly in 2016 after Hillary Clinton's loss, and that rather than address
I'm going to fix this. It's not over. I'm waiting for you to fix it.
They moved and they migrated. What happened is that the pandemic, right? The pandemic came upon us, and Joe Biden happened to be the person for the pandemic. And I think they mistook that moment for a referendum on what the Democrats had to offer.
I don't think Joe Biden was the right person for the pandemic either, for the record. I think that the Democrats basically packed it up and said, fall in fucking line. Fall in line. Joe Biden is the guy.
Rather than being introspective. I'll tell you one other person who I think is going to be incredibly important. Actually, two other people. The first person is one of the things that Bernie Sanders has been saying since at least 2014 has been about how the Democratic Party, if it wants to keep these coalitions, needs to talk about bread and butter issues. It needs to talk about politics. A lot of people attacked him for that, saying, well, are you saying that cultural politics don't matter? That's not what he was saying. He was saying we need to focus on these things. The other person is Stacey Abrams. We have not heard a lot from Stacey Abrams in this election cycle, but her organizations, particularly Fair Fight, the New Georgia Voter Project, and other organizations were instrumental in pulling together coalitions that ended up winning Joe Biden, Georgia in 2020, but also Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin.
Not this time, though.
I think,
dude, my favorite type of content right now is people being like, Hasan Piker was correct when he talked about young men being constantly flooded with right-wing propaganda in all digital spaces they spend time in. The right-wing propaganda machine is absolutely enormous and it has a grip on them. We need a solution to that like yesterday. The era of reactionary, anti-feminist, anti-immigration, racist lob content is back and way more powerful than before. Why are Gen Z men all Hitler? In a lot of ways, because of the massive media effort to make them little Hitlers. I need a million leftist men with large podcasts and streams ASAP. I don't know if I fully agree with that part of the conversation, but immediately, sure, but Hasan does nothing to make any of this better, so it's fucking ironic. Yes, I do, brother. Yes, I do. I'm sorry that your favorite content creator that goes and dunks on like fucking PUA podcasters or whatever the fuck is not actually reaching these people at all because his point of view is also inherently reactionary. You know what I mean? The argument isn't just more podcasts. The argument is also that the Democratic Party needs to change its campaign strategy in general. Okay? There were a shit ton of people who were Bernie bros that the Democratic Party ritualistically fucking cast aside and yelled at. This is my takeaway. There needs to be a liberal Ben Shapiro of 15 of them, and guys like Hasan Piker are decidedly not it, as he is leftist and shits on liberal/Dems constantly. By the way, gang, to be clear, I don't like Hasan. I don't dislike Hasan. I think he's overall a good dude. I respect the time he puts in. I just want our media people to actually cheerlead our candidates. That's a job requirement in my eyes. And Hasan instead prefers to constantly shit on our candidates. This is why you will never have the same coherent media strategy, especially on the independent side for the left. Okay? Because you don't want to fucking fall in line. I had 300,000 live concurrent viewers last night. Okay? Twitch removed me from the fucking front page. And I still had 300,000 live concurrent viewers watching the fucking election. And these guys are still like, Hasan is not the guy. Why? Because he makes correct criticisms of the Democratic Party. It's so ridiculous. You're missing the fucking point. That's why I said you can have a million Harry Hasans. It's not going to fucking hit that. It's not going to cause people to understand what's going on. It's not just about aesthetics. People just personally think it's just aesthetics. It's just aesthetics. Party loyalty above all else with, like, you know, ripped, jacked aesthetics is not going to fucking work. Cheerlead Lamau, the right wins because they go where their voters are and don't do this elite fucking filtering where the neoliberals never listen to their criticisms. Republicans fear their base and cater to it. Democrats hate their base and suppress it. Exactly. I'm going to tweet about this. Launching my election, my criticisms of Democratic Party's legislative agenda seems not only but also true. It's the Democrats at the top to the concerns of their base. You hype for more accelerationism cheerleading, bud? I've never been an accelerationist nor a cheerleader for accelerationism. I want the Democrats to win. I want the Democrats to be an effective counterbalance against growing fascism in this country. Okay? I fucking hate this shit. My criticisms of Dems' legislative agenda seems not only correct, it's the Democrats at the top that don't listen to the concerns of their base. Also, what he's saying only works on the right because they exploit their base's idiocy and apathy. They don't need facts on their side. I mean, that is also another part of the problem, but that's it. Like, my criticisms of Dems' legislative agenda seems to be correct. It's the Democrats at the top that don't listen to the concerns of their base and hand wave it away. Republicans fear their base. You're catching a lot of strays with the Democratic Party's abject failure. It's just like, I don't think people understand it, and I don't think people will ever understand it. The reality of the matter is, like, a lot of people farmed the hopefuls, the Democratic Party's hopefuls, right? They did. Hasan is an astroturfed Kremlin asset. Okay, this has 39 likes. Why are you showing me a schizophrenic poster with 39 likes on Twitter? That's crazy. This isn't drama time, okay? I was just trying to prove a point. The point being that immediately Hasan does nothing to make any of this better. So fucking ironic. It's stupid to say that, you know? Clarify you mean online. Otherwise, you are going to get people clown facing. Oh, yeah. I would argue that Hasan presents as an example of masculinity on the left, whether you agree with his methods or how effective he is. I don't think it's fair to present him as doing nothing or not trying. Hasan doesn't engage with these people or these ideas on a direct level. In fact, he goes out of his way to insult anyone who doesn't agree with his politics. It's like, you're just hurt chatters who have been banned formerly. Anyway, all right, let's continue. Let's see what Ari Melber has to say.
How did Trump increase his
on
support
MSNBC
this much?
MSDNC.
He made inroads in groups that have been Democratic voters, going from about 32% of the Latino vote to 45%. That's a 13-point jump. It's a major shift reflected across the country. It was even higher in some key states where Trump campaigned. He won 50% of the Latino vote in North Carolina, 58% of it in Michigan. It's the first presidential race since abortion bans became law, but Donald Trump's coalition actually improved a bit among women, going up 3, even as he ran famously against this woman candidate. Trump is now the oldest candidate to win the White House, yet he intensely and repeatedly targeted young men and newer, younger mediums like digital media and podcasts. And he cut into the typical youth support that Democrats enjoy, improving about 6 points with voters under 30. And finally, a look at how Trump did this requires something. And it requires that we look at the entire map beyond the swing states, because what you see here in total, and obviously it's all a lot of little indicators, but when you see it in total, much of the country moved towards the GOP, including in states like New York and New Jersey. You're looking at those arrows that show counties going towards Republicans. And you'll notice very little blue in the other direction. That's how Trump's winning coalition came together. Now, why? Why did he win those and other groups over? The answer matters for understanding reality, as reality really is. And in politics, the answers that people embrace matter a lot because they shape power and how others respond for even years to come. If everyone thinks a candidate won,
the framework that percentages went up without acknowledging how many votes were lost compared to 2020 is really annoying.
Then other candidates, notice the comparison here, will mimic that as a winning strategy, just as Trump's red MAGA style is echoed right down to the red tie by his political wannabes. So politicians often claim any victory is a mandate for their entire agenda. Then the actual governing begins, and some things are harder to enact than others. So why did Trump win this election? I just told you why the answers to that matter, but why did he win based on what voters said? Many voters said their top issue was the economy. It came second only to democracy, which of course was Harris's closing message, and it handily beat abortion, as you see here in the new numbers. Abortion was a vital issue for many, but it did not eclipse high prices and economic disruptions. And in a race that ran about 50 to 47, so pretty divided, take a look at this. 68% of voters came together on the view that this economy is poor or not so good. When you take the political question that Republicans first used against a one-term Democrat, you might remember, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Trump asked that a lot. 46% say worse off, only 24% say better, 30% about the same. That echoes numbers we've reported on before the election about how most Americans think we are on the wrong track. And while Biden and Democrats did try to talk people out of that view, the reality they felt they were living, and pitch data on inflation fading a bit, which it was, one of the most striking findings in the electorate Tuesday is not about Biden or Trump's policies. It's not some embrace of everything Trump ever said or pitched. It's an electorate reeling from the hardship of high prices and inflation to a degree that many elites may not have experienced personally or always treated as a top issue. In just the last year, so not going all the way back to COVID or 2 years ago, in the last year alone, a majority said inflation caused them hardship, 22% saying severe. If you put that together in the numbers, as we discussed in our breaking election coverage on Tuesday night, 75% of voters feel that recent hardship from inflation. And Trump won those voters. He won those who said they face severe hardship by 50 points. This trend goes well beyond the United States or Donald Trump. Voters have been booting incumbent politicians over exactly this issue, economic pain after COVID, around the world. This went on in what you could call inflation elections in democracies ranging from UK to Poland to Argentina to India to South Korea to South Africa. This has been a thing that has been well known in many places that have no Trump. So if you listen to the voters, that's the largest overriding reason. If you listen to past elections, it's an iron law of politics that incumbents are most likely to lose when the economy is bad. Now, there's a reason the most famous political saying in American politics still remains, it's the economy, stupid, from our friend James Carville. Those trends suggest some reasons why voters who've long disliked Trump could pick him over the incumbent party's vice president. And by the way, voters still didn't begin liking Trump more. You should know, 53% of Tuesday's voters still view Trump unfavorably. That's most voters. But 9% of that group that view him unfavorably still voted for him. That's the breadth of voters going away from Dems and to the GOP. That is real. Even though you could also read this as going away from incumbents who happen to be Democrats right now.
Stead Herndon of the New York Times is going to be on the broadcast on Friday. Confirmed.
To be read.
Also, Rashida Tlaib separately will be on the broadcast Friday.
Trump,
also confirmed.
Not because of his campaign's rhetoric. The totals reflect a voting bloc that is diverse in its composition. What pollsters in the United States call Latino actually combines people with heritage from 29 different countries. And as I've told you before, they're diverse in their views. More Latino voters have begun backing stronger immigration enforcement in the last 3 years. The share backing a border wall jumped 12 points to 42%. Those views have been clear for some time. You can find that by listening to what the community tells pollsters and surveys, to what their leaders say about more support for stricter immigration controls. Now, those are just some of the big trends that come through in this election data, which is new to us, so we're learning new things together. There are other factors and nuance that I'm sure will be explored for a long time to come. But this brings me to the final section of my report for you. As many people wake up today and ask, what now? And that's not just Trump's political opponents. There are people across ideologies who have come together on backing the tenets of just trying to maintain in the United States the nonpartisan goal of the type of society that Trump has defiantly opposed. Democracy, human rights, and some basic respect for fellow citizens. Not having a leader who talks in a way that would get you fired from your job or booted from a bar or worse. Well, one part of that process is what now? Trump's Democratic opponents may have to assess their own party's shortcomings. I'm not talking about some immediate surrender to Donald Trump's worst appeals or mimicking him, but Democrats could have the same hard, factual conversations they so often demanded Republicans have about their side, especially in the last 8 years. And even with the big trends just mentioned, it is relevant when you look at the results and the reaction in the country that the Democratic Party basically spent a year shouting down legitimate questions about President Biden, held some primaries, picked the results there, the voters picked Biden, and then the party pushed him out in a rushed top-down process.
Relative to what we're going to do with more border
Now they're
patrol
yelling at Tim Walz as a pig, by the way.
It was a slow start. There's no question about that. But I thought it was a strong finish.
Kind of a DEFCON 1 moment.
We have breaking news here. President Biden has announced he will stand down from the race.
That process handed Kamala Harris the shortest runway ever for a new candidate against the headwinds I just mentioned. It skipped the voting process that all prior candidates tend to go through. Democrats may find some value in exploring how they're losing ground with working people, young people, and some minorities. And even beyond the incumbent trends I mentioned, for those surprised that there is this MAGA plan and argument out there, surprised by how it sounds and what they're pitching and how it evolved and where it had appeal, well, that may come from ignoring people and information that was available. It's not a surprise to viewers of this program. As you can see here, we have been hearing from Trump's top aides, from Bannon to Navarro to Miller. We've pressed and fact-checked them according to our journalistic mission, but we've also, through that process, listened and followed their evolutions. That would be part of any informed activity in being alive and being a citizen engaging in politics. Bowing out on that, ignoring what's happening, puts you in a bubble. And bubbles are not only artificial, I can tell you bubbles usually pop. Now, whether Democrats look in the mirror or people listen more, that's really the politics, probably for the politicians. That's not the whole part of this section, though, of my report for you tonight. What now for our civil society? These 8 years of Trumpism have brought us a more divided, vulgar, cynical, and dishonest discourse in public life because of him and his apparent resilience and success. The examples are well known. I'm not going to hash through them all right now, but he attacks elections and facts. He and his party attack voting rights, your very role in your democracy. And many may recoil from these election results or want to just ditch civic engagement. That's a choice. But that's exactly what they want.
Oh, you want?
Remember, it's called voter suppression for a reason. Abandoning ship may save you, but it probably won't save the ship. History is also instructive here. In past times of unrest and talk of American fascists, remember, some of our counterculture leaders have talked about turning on, tuning in, and dropping out. And that is, of course, your choice. But maybe a better course is just taking a break, getting perspective, and locking back in. In or out of office, Donald Trump also attacks forces that have the power to possibly check him. So if you give up on voting, which obviously has that power, or you give up on the independent press, that's a pretty compliant response to someone trying to get you and the public to do just that. He has a playbook against journalists. We know across the world, politicians often try to abuse power against journalists, dissidents, artists with independence and with followings because they matter. And think about it. It's especially true when an opposition, meaning fact-checking, accountability, independent information, when it's rooted in facts or independence, it's especially powerful because it's different than the political opponents who can often be dismissed as simply competing for power of their own. We also have guardrails in terms of what now. Sometimes it's voters. Sometimes it's the law. I'm not sugarcoating history that we lived through. Donald Trump did exploit loopholes well known to many about our legal systems, that the rich and the powerful can evade laws that still bind others, that they get all kinds of special treatment, and then his Supreme Court also granted him a new set of powers he may now test. But that's only part of the story. He also was repeatedly blocked from abusing power, courts stopping his travel ban in its tracks, as you may remember. And when Trump did plunge into now proven convicted criminal plots, even though, yes, he was able to evade much for himself, his top aides were definitely held accountable, prosecuted, some imprisoned, as you see here, this very year. Trump's second-term hires could be more extreme. But remember, federal judges have life tenure. They can be a check. A president has no control over local and state courts or government in our federal system. And much of what I've said to you tonight is national in its nature, about the whole country, about the federal government. Many key tasks ahead are still at the local level. Your own school districts, your own libraries, your own local officials who are directly involved in your life that you might meet and spend time with regularly. That's not only a ripe area for civic engagement, could be more tangible and even less overwhelming for many people. So, maybe no one needs to do anything today, but even making a personal vow to at least reject that temptation, which is real, to drop out or prematurely surrender to the very apathy they want, that may be a start for you today. And as for what comes after that, I assure you, this is still a democracy, and we can still have a conversation and decide on what comes next.
Not
together.
Subbing because no more top of the hour. Real Republican here. I cannot express my selfishness. Shame on you. You can still subscribe even if you're a Republican. Senator Chuck Schumer of New York, the majority leader, said in his first statement since the Republicans won back control of the Senate and have hinted they will allow President-elect Donald J. Trump to set their agenda, that the work of the Senate will continue to be passing bipartisan legislation. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I'm Brian Kilmeade. Oh my God. Oh, thank God that the Democrats are going to continue along with Trump's fascist agenda with bipartisan legislation. Thank God. I was really worried. You literally said Republicans deserve death, though? Wait, what? No, I didn't. I think you're genuinely mistaking me for another commentator. When the fuck did I say that? At most, I've probably said they need to go to re-education camps.